All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. I am your host, Mark Ross, and with me this evening, I have with me Zahra Adloo.
Yeah, you got it.
Hey, all right, yay! Uh, Zahra, you are a marriage and family therapist. Is that correct? Okay, but you're also a, an Ibogaine integration coach.
Yes. Yes. So I work with this plant medicine called Ibogaine, and it's derived from a root bark of Iboga, this plant that's basically located in western parts of Africa.
Okay.
And yeah, and we'll go into that, but that's not many people know how to pronounce it or are aware of what this even is.
Mm, okay. Uh, which I was going to ask you, what is Ibogaine and how do you how do you integrate that into your practice?
That's a really good question. So ibogaine is, or you could say ibogaine. I just say ibogaine, but it's
Potato,
an
potato.
alkaloid taken from this plant, this root bark called Iboga. And Iboga has existed in western parts of Africa for centuries and has been used in the Bwiti tribe to be able to have ceremonial settings, to feel like a connection to the divine, and to be able to bring community together. So it's a practice or it's a plant medicine that's been used in a practice in a cultural setting in a country in a religious context for centuries before it was westernized in the 60s in the US. And basically, Ibogaine helps with people putting people back into pre-addictive states. So it rewires your brain to not have you chemically dependent on the substance that you're addicted to. And it also helps with behavioral addictions too. Also, very, very beneficial for traumatic brain injury for soldiers who have experienced injury in combat,
Mm,
PTSD, and
mm,
then depression and anxiety. And now also like used for Parkinson's disease. So it actually helps people eliminate the tremors and the shakes. It helps them make muscle movements that they haven't been able to do. Some people feel very stuck and frozen. So even being able to talk, it gives them the ability to be able to do that. And it honestly, I think it's a plant medicine that allows people to release themselves from the mental traps and the imprisonment they feel within their body.
mm.
And I integrate it with my work because I have a history working in substance use addiction. And I just realized that it's an outdated model when you work in a clinical setting with psychotherapy alone. And
Okay.
I need to find something for my clients or for people that I work with that actually helps them, that helps rewire their brains, take them to a place where they no longer feel that they have an urge to seek out this drug that has been putting their lives into this chaos and this place that they don't want to be in anymore. I use psychotherapy in conjunction with the plant medicine because you never can rely on one thing to be able to cure you. It's not that you actually have to put in the work, but what it does do is it gives you the freedom to wake up every morning and say, I actually don't need to take a shot of heroin to feel okay or to not feel the withdrawal symptoms, or I actually don't need to take a shot of the alcohol or or drink the handle of booze every single day to function.
Mm,
So it gives you that freedom, but ultimately the psychotherapy helps people make choices and helps them like identify lifestyle changes that they'd like to make so that they can sustain that sobriety. And so when life begins lifing, they're not going to the very things that imprison them or that put them in the state that they were in, which was, addicted.
mm.
Yeah.
Now, as a veteran that suffers from PTSD, how would this drug help me rewire my thinking?
So they actually had a study done by Stanford. They took 1,000 like veterans who suffered from PTSD, traumatic brain injury, depression, and anxiety, and they gave them one dose of a flood dose of Ibogaine, and they did a survey with them a month later, and all of their symptoms, depression, anxiety, trauma, PTSD, everything had decreased in the 90th percentile even a month after their treatment. So What
Mm,
it does is it targets something in your brain called the kappa opioid receptors. That's responsible for giving you those anxious feelings, to putting you into a depressive state, making you hypervigilant, and it actually
mm,
allows neuroplasticity, BDNF, in your brain to actually make new neural connections. So you can actually take the experiences that you've had and not have them hold you back when you're back in civilization, to be able to function amongst, community and society in a way that's not disturbing to your lifestyle. So I would just have to say, like, you have to be compassionate for those parts of you that had to be in combat and were, needed to be wired that way in that setting. But then once you come back to civilization, you want your brain to be able to take back and say, actually, I need to readjust to this. I'm safe. I don't need to be hyper alert, hyper vigilant. And I am not in combat anymore. So this puts you in a state again that gets you to not feel so suffocated by the need to be safe in
mm,
settings that you were once needed to act those ways in to feel that way.
mm.
Um, so like the research proved itself, and there have been so many clients that I've worked with that, I mean, have had to take antidepressants after combat and no
Absolutely.
longer even need to take those. They're
Nice.
completely like rid of them, and they feel like they are normal again. I mean, to the point where a lot of them had suicidal ideations. And then, I'm sure you know this yourself, but like veterans experience higher rates of suicide than any population in the US. And
Absolutely.
so to be able to give this plant medicine to veterans is doing a service to the entire, like our entire society, and the ratios in which suicide exists in the US. And just to add to this, Texas just this past week added, they were the first FDA approved, publicly funded, it's the most funding that they've ever received for research, to accept Ibogaine in the US to be able to be researched for veterans and people with PTSD. So it's a big breakthrough because Ibogaine is illegal in the US. And so the fact that we just got 50 million in publicly funded research for research to be publicly funded is a big deal. And it was FDA approved. So now we're doing phase one trials for people who have PTSD and who have been in combat.
Mm. And speaking of all that, we're in June, and June is Men's Mental Health Month.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, I mean, we're talking about mental health, and we're talking about veterans and the suicide rates that veterans suffer from.
Mhm.
Uh, I was looking at this, and I'll be brief. I was looking at this reel, if you will, on Facebook, and the caption was basically saying that a man commits suicide a minute of every day. Every minute of the day, there's
Wow.
somebody out here taking their lives.
Wow.
Not dying, but they're taking their lives.
That's huge. Yeah. Yeah.
Minute
Could
of
you imagine how hopeless you have to feel in the system and like your mind to be able to say, I actually can't take it anymore.
Yeah,
The best way out is just to be out.
yeah. I just have to check out.
Yep.
But understand, I was there with them.
Hmm. And then,
And
like, depending on what religion you were grown up in or like what your family is like, there's all that shame that also follows the passing of this person that was suffering on earth, right? Who didn't see a way out. So I even like to, I mean, I would say like death by, they have a whole different term. Instead of saying suicide, they say like death by I don't know, self-administration or something like that. But
yeah,
yeah, it's tough. Like there's this whole stigma on that word,
huge, huge.
right? And so it's like it's so sad to see that, like, this population not only had to risk their lives in combat and be in situations that were so difficult for anybody to be in, and then to come back in civilization, not be able to adjust and still feel that they are not able to find a way to be at peace to the
Mm,
degree where they have to end their lives
mm.
altogether. It's like you're doomed if you do, or you're doomed if you don't, right? Like you either die in combat and you're at peace, or you come back and you have to and you think about, wait, I should have died.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. So
Yeah.
so therefore, I'm going to do something about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I don't deserve to be here. Yeah. What is that? Survivor's remorse.
Right, right.
Yeah. Have-
Survivors are for sure.
Survivor's remorse. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, have you ever felt that way? Did you ever feel in any type of way that like this
No,
was just the ending for you?
no,
What
no.
helped you? What was your anchor that helped you not feel that way?
Uh, well, I was in the Marines when before Desert Storm jumped off. I was in it when it was still Desert Shield. So I didn't get to go shoot or kill anybody, you know what I mean? But I did do some other things, and uh it made me very humble and appreciative of the simplicities of life, right? My problem stemmed from separating myself from the military, and after being in it for so long, you're coming out of a conditioned, predictable environment to a unpredictable, unsecure environment. I wasn't ready for it.
Mhm.
I was not ready for that change. It was
Of going from an unpredictable to a predictable environment?
predictable to an unpredictable. Yes,
Okay.
yes. The it
So,
was it was
wait,
a culture shock for me.
so like the predictable was when you were in service?
Military. Yes,
Oh, because it was so structured.
yes, correct.
Interesting, interesting. I would have thought the opposite because I mean, you weren't on the field, but like, if
Yeah,
anything, I thought, okay, like you're going to be put into a zone where you don't
yeah,
know what's going to happen
yeah,
to your body,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
And a lot of us, after so many years, I interviewed somebody a few weeks ago, Zara, and he said this, and it I felt it when he said it. He said that veterans suffer because they've become what's the word I'm looking for? That they become institutionalized,
Right. Hmm.
like a person in
And
jail.
I can say that, yeah, not just with people in jail, but about like people in addiction treatment. You know, when they are going from rehab to rehab, they are institutionalized as well because once they leave the rehab, they end up relapsing, and then they're back into the system again.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
dependent on the system.
They
Right?
are. They don't really know how else to survive.
No,
Right.
yeah. So we're for real on survival mode because we're on our own.
Hmm.
We are really on our own. So it's like you better when you get out of the service, you better have a nice family structure to come back home to. Otherwise, you're in a lot of fucking trouble. And I say that very bluntly. You are going to be in trouble.
Why do you is it going off of your own experience
Yeah.
that, so did you come home to a nice structured home or,
Yeah, I
okay,
came back home. My family supported me. I came home. I went to college. I got a part-time job while I was going to school, and uh, I ended up getting another part-time job. So I was working two jobs, going to school part-time, and so I stayed busy. But when the nightmares started to kick in, uh, that changed the game.
right, right.
That changed my life as I knew it. Because number one, I didn't know where these nightmares were stemming from. But like I told you, I was struggling to readapt
Right.
because I came from an environment that it was predictable to me.
Mhm.
And now I'm home and things have changed a lot in 4, 5 years. You know,
Mhm.
I didn't know what to expect. Uh, my everything was just thrown up in the air. It's like, well, you're free to go, you know, do
So
it.
there was no integration of let's get you back into civilization.
No,
And
no,
that's where the problem is.
that's what the
I
problem was.
actually have I have a client that I met up with 2 days ago who was talking about that. You know, he just came back from serving, and he's like, he's hyper vigilant with his house. He has cameras, he has guns. He's like, something's going to happen. What's interesting is that he ends up having people show up at his house, who are on like a high speed chase. And a part of that makes me wonder, are his thoughts attracting that chaos, right?
Mm,
Like, or it's, there's a book that I read called Mind Magic, and it talks all about the science, the neuroscience of manifestation. It's like whatever you think will manifest. Now, if you're coming from a structured setting from the military, right? And then you're just thrown into unstructured, you're already feeling on edge. And so I'm wondering if those thoughts are going to continue to manifest into
mm,
more chaos because you're
mm,
already on edge. It's out of the structure that you were in, right?
mm, mhm.
And so, and you said, 4 or 5 years before I started to adapt in a sense. I'm
Oh, it
wondering
took me what?
in those 4 or 5 years, like what happened?
Well, it took me longer to really mentally deal with the fact that I was a civilian. All right. I would tell, my family, I'm like, mentally I feel like I'm back in North Carolina because I'm still Corporal Mark Ross. I'm not Mark Ross the civilian. I still got up early. I still worked out 3 or 4 days a week. I ran, did my normal Marine Corps workouts. The only difference was instead of going to, my military job, I was going to another job
Yeah.
as Mark.
Mhm.
I had to learn how to give up the rank, so to speak. I had to give that up. I had to give that up mentally. I had to separate myself mentally
It was
from
a part
that.
of your identity that you had grief over, that you had to lose.
Mm,
Part of you that you had to let go of.
yeah. Yeah.
And there's a whole grief cycle that we go through when we experience loss.
And I didn't know it.
Right,
I was
right.
just dealing with the best way I could. And yeah, like I said, it wasn't good. It wasn't good, but I learned a lot along the way. Uh, I'm grateful to God um, that I'm here.
I want to point out what you mentioned about having support from your family, but also what you just brought up, God, right? Like having some type of faith to anchor you, not just with the support, but something else to look forward to be able to say, actually, like I'm not a victim. I know all of this happened for me. And so I'd love to ask you, but just based on your own experience, like in what ways did you see your strength that you didn't get to see or did not even know existed before you joined the military?
Hmm. In high school, Zara, I didn't know what my life was going to be, and I wanted to do something with my life that would be impactful. I didn't want to remain in Milwaukee because I didn't want to work in a factory. I didn't want to go to college at the time. I just finished high school, so I really wanted to get out and travel, see the world, as they say, and meet different people. So I made that conscious decision to join the military. Um, and I, I don't have any regrets doing it, none whatsoever. Like I said, I knew in my heart that I had to leave. I had to see things, I had to see life from a different lens.
You're a risk taker, you followed your intuition, right? And it led you to places that you didn't imagine. Although there were some side effects,
Oh, indeed.
but you are making an impact by just like broadcasting, sharing your story, right?
Indeed.
And allowing other people to feel like they can relate
Mm. Hmm.
to what you've experienced with the contrast of being a civilian and not.
Yeah. And back with the Ibogaine, have you
Yeah.
personally used it?
Yes, I've done 2 journeys. I actually would never advocate for something unless I did it myself. So that actually was a part of my journey. When I quit my positions as an associate therapist working in treatment centers in LA. I was like, all right, now I'm looking for the truth. I'm looking for something that actually can help people. And I mean, God honestly brought that, the divine brought it into my path. And I was like, I'm going to go try Ibogaine. I'm going to go do this. And so I went and did it, and it completely changed my perception of myself
Mm,
and the perception of what was going on in my life. So I was in the moment, I was actually in a very toxic relationship that I was breaking free from, but I was emotionally not broken, like free from it. You know, I had codependent tendencies and feeling very dysregulated if the person did not talk to me, even though I'm like, away from them. I live apart. I still had an attachment that I didn't want to let go of. And I had a lot of like self-esteem stuff come up, like, you know, from the abuse that I went through. And in that Ibogaine journey, I was able to see why like I had those self-esteem issues and why I got into the dynamic that I was in. And it helped me really see that I was a lot more resourceful and a lot more confident and stronger than I thought that I was. And then from there, because everything just blossomed and I was like, my brain had broken free from the entrapment of my own thoughts, I became an advocate. I'm like, everybody should experience this. I hope that everyone can.
mm.
Especially if you suffer from OCD, because I had body dysmorphic disorder. And so anytime I would get stressed, I would pick at myself. And I
What's
mean, that
that?
life happens. Yeah. So body
Explain,
dysmorphic.
explain
Okay.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Body dysmorphic disorder is a form of OCD. So
Okay.
instead of like what we see with the common side effects or the common traits of people who have OCD are more so like hand washing, needing to touch doorknobs, needing to make sure things are intact, such as like money being in your wallet or just a lot of cleanliness.
Mm,
For me, it had to do with seeing perceived flaws on my body, on my face. So let's just say like I would pick at my ears one day, or like the next day it would be like, oh my God, your nose is like this, or and it would change all throughout like you know my body. Or I would pick at my how like thin or big I was. Like it never feels like, you know, there's never a satisfaction with the way you look physically. And
mm.
it sounds very, very vain. And I knew that it was. And I'm like, I am way more than this. I'm way more than me being stuck in these thought loops. I want to actually explore parts of my brain that have been dormant. I want to like go towards my interests more. I don't want to be trapped in every time I'm anxious or stressed, I need to start picking at myself in the mirror or like needing to do mirror rituals where like you go and check yourself to make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it just was not something I wanted to be in and I couldn't help it. I couldn't get out of it. And I was like this from as early as I could say I was like 5 or 6 years old.
Oh,
And so, you know, a lot of it can be genetic, a lot of it could be from your environment. I had hypercritical parents. So sometimes even if you have like a parent who has OCD, you and they like they're picking at you or like critical, you start to internalize and personalize it. And then that becomes the reason why that OCD pattern and the dysmorphia can form.
wow.
So that was my case. And I was aware of it. And I would say ever since I had my treatment, I've been completely like rid of it. And I can tolerate situations that I don't have control over as much. Like my window of tolerance with emotions has expanded. So when something used to stress me out before, I would either like compulsively buy something or I would contact a psychic, which I didn't really even believe in, but I had to compulsively do things
Yeah.
or pick at myself. And now I'm like, oh, okay, that's going to happen. And I trust that like what's meant to happen will, and I can actually surrender to God and know that my divine has the best purpose for me and the best plan for me.
Mm,
Whereas before that, it was, I couldn't see any of that. I had that belief. I just couldn't follow through with it because I was so dysregulated. And
mm.
so Ibogaine gave me back that freedom within myself. It helped me become more regulated within, I would say.
And this is natural,
It's
correct?
all natural and it's crazy because it's illegal here, and there is nothing like there's no parts of it that actually cause addiction or cause you to want to do more. It's a very sacred journey. It's a Schedule 1 substance, which is like insane for me to believe, because what that means is that like if it's Schedule 1, it means it's highly addictive. And I'm just like, it's such an outdated like regulatory model, or like it was placed in that category that's so outdated. There's no evidence or research that can prove that it is actually addictive for it to be in that category. So I mean, yeah, we we know that the system is messed up, and this is one of them.
Well, you know, it leads me to talk about how jacked up our the pharmaceutical world is, and they how they
Very,
they make the calls as to what is acceptable and what isn't. And
right?
you're talking about something that is natural,
Natural. Well, you know what? When it's
but they
natural, you can't
but they
make money
present
off of it,
and they
right? Like,
present that and they
yeah,
present
you
medications
can't
that
make
has
money because you
mad side
can't.
effects.
Yeah, you can't patent it. You can't. So now they're working on derivatives. They're so like analogs, which is basically like what's the chemical way that we can create the ibogaine molecule or whatever alkaloid. And it's like, yeah, we're only doing that because we can't patent the plant and make money off of it in that way, or like to the masses. I don't know. Like, there's a whole book about it called Bottle of Lies, and it's interesting that the US will allow for, let's just say, a heroin or a meth addict to be prescribed methadone, Subutex, Suboxone. These are long-acting opioids. They'll be prescribed that and made sure that they're on that for the rest of their lives before they actually give them a plant medicine treatment that will have them come off of everything in one try, 1 or 2 tries at the most. Right? It's like, dude, how fucked is our system? Like, to what
Yeah.
degree can, capitalism and greed win? And I mean, we're more woke to it, we're a lot, and that's one of the reasons why I'm on this, and why I'm advocating, because I can't legally practice with Ibogaine in the US. I have a partnership with a very trustworthy clinic in Mexico, but like the fact that people have to go to Mexico to
Mm.
get a treatment, that we should all as humans on this earth have the right to access these herbs, right? Especially if they're beneficial to us. And so, yeah, we're allowing alcohol to exist in this world. We're allowing marijuana to exist, but we can't allow for Ibogaine to exist in the US. And when it actually, there's like research has proven its efficacy for treating an epidemic we have in the US with like heroin addiction and opioids,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just crazy.
It
It's
is.
crazy, man. It really is.
And you
Uh,
have to go to Mexico to administer Ibogaine to your patients.
Yeah, so I actually don't administer it. Like it's a clinical staff that does that. They have a nurse, a doctor on site. I do the psychotherapy and the integration work with the client because, like I said, like you do actually have to do the inner work. So you can't just go and do a treatment and say, "Oh my God, like that's it, my life's amazing." Yes, it's going to feel that way. No, you're not going to be addicted to the substance anymore. But hey, like you do need to unpack what you got from your journey to help you get to the place, to the root cause of why you even had to resort to going to using drugs or alcohol as a way to calm yourself or a way to cope.
Mm.
Right. So I do a lot of that. I do the integrate, I get deep with the client, and it's a very humbling experience. So yes, there isn't a lot of like quantitative data on Ibogaine. There is a fair amount, but I would say the qualitative data is what I collect by just doing my one-on-one work. And it's impressive what this plant medicine can do.
Man. So are there any other uh people like you that, promote this?
So the person that actually really helped me in my journey, and I don't even know if she's aware of this, but her name is Juliana Mulligan. I bring her up because when I went to sign up for my Ibogaine treatment, you have to be mindful that it is an unregulated market. So meaning there aren't any like regulatory practices that help make sure that the treatments are done effectively or that they are done ethically. So you really have to go by word of mouth. And I almost went to a clinic that was that would have re-traumatized me because of their unsafe practices.
Oh.
Because it's also like a way, it's an expensive treatment. So
Mm.
people are, a lot of like people out there, a lot of clinics that exist out there are also not completely ethical. They're doing it for the funding, for the money. And I almost went to one of those clinics until I had someone tell me to reach out to Juliana, who's been in the industry for at least 15 plus years. And she guided me to go to the right places and to receive the treatment under ethical care. And she's the one that actually connected me to the treatment center that I'm affiliated to now that I work with closely.
Mm.
So I would say Juliana was a big influencer. And also um, this documentary I watched titled Dosed was a really, really big influence for me. It's actually the reason why I even learned about Ibogaine, because it was from this documentary when I was in graduate school.
Okay.
So yeah.
Nice. What's the limit of ibogaine that a person can take, or how much can a person take?
So when you have your treatment done, you get something called a flood dose, which is basically like a large amount of the like powder or the medicine that you can take in that moment. And each person is different based on their body weight, so it's tailored for everyone. And I from what I've heard in the industry, I wouldn't do a session like less than 4 months apart from each other. And that's what I ended up doing. I actually did one treatment and then I did another treatment 4 months later. But anything before that, like you really don't need it. I don't think you really don't need it unless you end up like just not using the tools, not integrating a lifestyle into your life that you'd like to hold on to. And then you end up like maybe relapsing again. But in reality, like it's not many people need to do it. They might do like boosters. So for instance, the Parkinson's clients that we have, their shakes deteriorate after their treatment. They go almost go away. But what happens like a month afterwards is it starts to come back just a little bit, not to the degree where it used to be. So then they just need like booster doses, which are small amounts that they would take like on a monthly or a weekly basis to make sure that they continue to grow and advance in their treatment. But as far as like someone like me who went for like a therapeutic dose for the psychotherapeutic benefits, I would have been fine with just one treatment, to be
Hmm.
honest. So yeah.
That's deep. So, uh, man, I just wonder how, if this became a legal drug, you know, how quick this would just blow up, and really help people save lives, right? This sounds like a life-saving operation here.
Yeah, I mean, I think they say that like right now the suicide, or not the suicide, but like the death toll for people who are addicted to fentanyl is the highest it's ever been. I mean, that in itself, we're saving the youth because like fentanyl is like going after the youth. So I'm talking about people who are under the age of 25. And so if we could just help that epidemic stop right away, or like the heroin. I mean, you would not only target people who have addiction issues, but they would target veterans, right?
Mm.
Traumatic brain injury, PTSD, who are suffering from suicidal ideations. You're helping people with Parkinson's disease, Lyme's disease. You're helping people not depend on antidepressants for the rest of their lives. So, like, you're going to be shutting down a lot of different industries. And that's why it's such a threat, you know?
Indeed.
Um,
Indeed.
and that's why I speak up. I'm like, I don't care. It is a threat and it may never get passed in the US for the capitalistic reasons that it wouldn't get passed for. But what I can do is I can use my voice and give people awareness so that they can go to Mexico or Portugal or the Netherlands or any or Brazil or New Zealand where it's legal and get their treatment done.
Mm, mm.
Mhm.
Zara, I know we're pressed for time because I know you have other engagements to do. So I would just ask, how can people contact you in case they want to learn more about this drug?
Yeah, so the best way is to contact me, like to find me on Instagram. I really like for people to connect with me and see who I am because I think it's so important if anyone wants to go on a journey with me as their facilitator or as their integration coach, that
Mm,
they actually have a connection with me as well, because that safety is what will help them in their journey. So they need to have that trust, that connection. And so Instagram is the best way. My handle is ZeeShirazi. And then I also have my website, so ZahraAdloo.com, where you can find to email me on there. And I'm pretty responsive within 48 hours. So just make sure you let me know like where where you got my information from, but I'll definitely respond and give you as much feedback and as much information that I can help you out with.
all right. Zara Adloo,
Yes.
it has been a pleasure talking with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me about Ibogaine because I had no clue that this even existed until I met you. And I I really am rooting for you in terms of the work that you do and the risks that you're taking because, like you said, you have to go to Mexico
Mhm. Yeah,
to
I walk over the border and it could get shady in that little walk, but
yeah, I bet.
ultimately, like I have a really good team. I have my Mexican family, I would call them that clinic. Armando is the owner. And I'm just grateful that these people exist and actually do the work that they do so that I can take my clients there and I can spread the awareness and actually have a place that I could send people to, you know?
Mm,
So, yeah.
yeah. Well, Zara, again, it has been a pleasure interviewing you, and much success to your journey and the work that you do. So uh, I won't hold you. I will let you go. And before I do that, I will let the people that are listening know that this has been another episode of the Speak Your Truth with Mark Ross podcast. Please remember, it's okay to not be okay. Just do something about it.
Mark,
That
I
being said, with that being said, Sarah, you enjoy the rest of your day,
too,
and
Mark. Thank
you
you
have a
so
good one.
much. I'm so honored that you do this. Thank you for allowing me to have this space in the container so that this word can be the word can be spread out and awareness can be built within the US.
Indeed, indeed.
Thank you.
So much, Sarah. You
All
have a
right.
good evening.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye.